my fellow comic book collectors. Today, Mark and I are doing a very special video. We're going to be talking about the horror movies that we love. Like, these are movies, it's hard to say that you love a horror movie, but you can love a horror movie. They're just so awesome. And these ones, I think it's a really interesting list that we kind of discussed our list before doing this. And it was actually really interesting. We're like, oh yeah, that's a really great one. And we both had some that we didn't know that from each other's list, which is actually kind of interesting. So I'm probably going to have to watch some movies after this. So let's get started. What's the first one on your list, Mark?
Okay, so, well, the first one on our list is the one movie that we both had on our top 10 list. Okay. So we both had a top 10 list. We compared them. I thought there were going to be 4 or 5 the same movies. There weren't. There was only one. So the first movie we're going to talk about is The Shining. So that was on both our lists. I mean, The Shining is probably on my list of 10 best films ever. I just adore it.
Yeah, me too.
Stanley Kubrick, brilliant.
It's his best movie, in my opinion.
Yeah,
his best movie.
Really, really good. And Jack Nicholson just smashes it out of the ballpark, playing this sort of drunk writer who's
gets a little iffy towards the end. All work, no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Indeed, indeed. Shelley Duvall, who interestingly, the director and Shelley Duvall got nominated for worst director and worst actress in the Razzie Awards for this film.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which is
they
so
decided
funny
to let Shelley Duvall off after they heard that Kubrick treated her badly.
Well, she actually, I think, acted extremely well. So there was there was actually a funny thing. There was a scene where she's like swinging the bat and trying to keep her husband away, and he had her do that scene 200 some odd times. So she was in tears. I mean, she was like so messed up that it came out on the screen, and she's like, "Stay away." It's just like, because she's like really that is legitimate feeling that she's putting in. Not that it's not acting anymore. It was just like she's literally going to collapse, literally going to be just like she's going to hit the director with the bat. It was a great scene. It was just, and there's a few scenes where he literally there's a jump scare. I think he actually did this in Exorcist, the director in Exorcist. So I'll save it for that. But there's just so many scenes in it where he did crazy things. So where the typing?
Yeah.
He actually got somebody to manually type out. All work, no play makes Jack a dull. Somebody actually typed out literally thousands of pages of that line. And what was it for? It was just so that they could flip through it. It was crazy. So, that kind of attention to detail just makes that you can sense it, you can feel it. It's just that this is real. This is not a movie. This is real. And
the long shots down the corridor with the kid in his bicycle, just brilliant. And also, I mean, this was actually Stephen King didn't like the movie either. He said it was too far from his novel originally when it came out, and he sort of came to Stephen King. He went to stay, I think, at that hotel right at the end of the season, and there was nobody else there, and he was like, wow, this is really, really spooky. I don't know if you've ever had that, where you've been in a big building and for whatever reason, there's nobody else there, or it's empty, or it's the end. It was like at school, if I was the last kid there, the whole school was empty, and it was really strange and eerie.
It is eerie. There's a bunch of things, especially a big building like that where, you get the sounds of the boiler, you got the weird thumps and bumps that just happen, settling of the building, and it's happening elsewhere. So you're like, what is that? And you know, you don't know if it's somebody in the place. You know, you feel like you're not really alone. You know, I love the atmosphere of that movie, and the fact that they were like in a sort of that they're trapped there in a way, because it's
well,
like
of course, there's that photo at the end where you see Jack Nicholson in the photo in the 1920s bar, you know, back,
yeah.
you know, so it's all a bit I like that.
But what I mean by they're being trapped there, I mean there's actually the blizzard that's
yeah, of course, yeah.
they're snowed in.
Yeah.
So not only are they in this situation, but they're literally in that. They can't walk away from the situation. It's not like, you know, they're trapped there. It's quite brilliant.
Yeah. So
actually, you know, it's funny. Just quickly on this one same movie, the sequel is actually really good.
I've never watched the sequel.
You know, the one that just came out recently, where it's actually like it should be on this list. That's how good it is.
Okay, I'll check that out. I didn't.
It's the one with what's his name, the guy that played Obi-Wan.
Ewan McGregor.
Ewan McGregor. Yeah. It's got him in it, and it's it's actually, you know, usually sequels kind of, you know, take away the whole legacy.
Yeah.
It adds to it. It's actually quite. Yeah, they have the hotel in it and everything. But it's not focused on the hotel.
Okay.
So it's the stories really happens elsewhere, and it's really explaining The Shining and stuff, and it's quite good.
Okay.
Definitely one to check out.
Right. Okay. So there we go. That was our first pick. So Alan.
Oh, then that's called Mr. Sleep, by the way. Mr. Sleep.
Mr. Sleep. Okay, I shall go. Yeah. So Alan, do you want to?
Well, it's my channel.
Both our first choices, actually. So I'll go next.
Yeah. So you'll go again.
Okay. So my next one, and I'm amazed Alan didn't have this on his list, is The Exorcist, which scared the bejesus out of me when I first saw it.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up.
You know, and this was a crazy film. I mean, Alan talked about Stanley Kubrick doing The Shining. This guy, I think it was a guy called Friedman, wasn't it? He sort of insisted on some really strange stuff. So insisted in going out to Iraq and doing filming when it was not safe out there. He insisted on some of the scenes being shot at 0 degrees centigrade when there was sort of so people's breath was frosty. He insisted that the extras who were medics and priests were actually played by actual medics and priests. Yeah, you know, and it was really, and there was a whole load of stress. I think a couple of people died in the filming process. And
you gotta have a few real deaths to make it.
Linda Blair and a couple of the others actually suffered long-term back injuries as a result of this.
Oh wow, I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
But I kind of, in a weird way, ruined her career.
Well, it only just started, wasn't it? She was an unknown.
Yeah, it kind of, you know, what did she do after it? Not much.
She did a bit, but it was all B stuff, B movies.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of weird.
And Max von Sydow was the only name, really, only in it. But I think it is a brilliant piece of filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, this just shows how the power of like almost a crazy director or like a really hyper focused director can be. There's a scene in it where there's like you can tell that the actor has been jump scared, you know, like that kind of thing. Well, in it, the director took a shotgun right up behind the guy and shot it. So the guy is literally freaked out by the fact that there was a shotgun that just went off behind him. And so the that scare, you know, is legit. So yeah, pretty awesome.
Yeah, and you know, it was the first time we saw a number of sort of what are now standard horror movie tropes. You know, the head spinning round and the vomiting.
Yeah.
That was the first time we'd seen any of that. You know, You know, and I can remember it came out. When did it come out? It was 19. 1973. So I was 14 at the time, and I can remember, hearing all the sort of news stories about people dying in the cinemas and having heart attacks and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of funny. So this and The Shining and some of the other movies we're going to mention, one of the things that really sets them apart in a weird way is the score, the music.
Yes.
You can remember the music for Exorcist. You can remember the music for some of these other ones that we're going to talk about. And it's kind of like when you hear that music, all of a sudden you're brought back into the movie. It's the weirdest thing. But Exorcist definitely has that,
Yeah. So there you go. That's my one on my list that you didn't have, which I'm surprised.
Yeah, great movie though. Yeah, it's one that should be on the list, but I didn't have it because I'm weird. This is a weird one for me. American Werewolf in London. Now, this movie is kind of like I have to have it on the list because before this movie, it kind of changed my life. Before this movie, I was kind of like a kid who was always scared. I couldn't be in the house by myself. I was always alone. I didn't like the idea of being alone. And so my friends had a party, birthday party. And back then what we'd do is you'd get some VHS tapes, you'd watch them. And he picked this movie. We were young kids. We were like, this was like 1985. So we watched this. And so it's not meant for that young of kids, right? It's actually got some nudity. It's got some stuff in it. And everyone was watching it, boys and girls. Back then you invite the whole class over, right? So what happened was I got scared. There was a jump scare. I got scared. Everybody laughed at me. Everybody made fun of me. Oh, you're a total wimp. And I was like ridiculed for like a week. So because of that, I determined that I would not be scared anymore. And I'd start watching horror movies religiously, like watch every scary, oh, there's a scary one. I got to find even scarier than that. I got to, and so it's the movie that kind of changed my life in terms of watching horror movies and getting into horror. Okay. So I have to have it. But it is a brilliant movie on its own. It's just such a great movie.
It's a great movie. I really enjoyed it. What I really liked about it is I saw it at a cinema in London. And if you remember the film,
it's got
a scene where the werewolf attacks people in a cinema.
In a cinema in London.
So everybody was sort of going like this,
Yeah. That would be the best, I think. What I actually like about it is that it makes the whole werewolf a sympathetic character. And that's actually kind of very interesting thing about it. He knows what he is in a way. He doesn't really believe it, but it's like one of those things where he's conflicted about whether or not he should just kill himself or potentially kill other people. I think it's just a great movie.
Yeah, no, it's a good movie. I enjoyed it. It's
yeah.
And I hadn't even thought about it. If I had thought about it, it might have been on my list.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm going all the classics here, Alan. So I've done The Shining, I've done The Exorcist, and the third one on my list is Alien. That's the first one. I just love this movie when it first came out. I was just at the right age. Alien, when did Alien come out? Alien came, I think
81 or something.
79.
79. It was 79.
20. So, I was allowed to go to it was an X-rated film. I was allowed to go and see it. I wanted to go. I went to see it. Did it come out the same year as Jaws? It was very similar time.
Yeah, similar time.
And I went to see Alien, and the bit where the thing comes out of John Hurt's chest,
yeah. Yeah, it's
that is one of the best moments in horror films, especially when you don't know about it in advance. Everybody knows about it these days, but at the time I went to the cinema, I had no idea. I was just going there, and the whole cinema, went,
Yeah, I mean, it's so great. They're having a casual dinner. They're all joking. Things are fine. Oh, because they were worried about the guy. He was like, just he's in the hospital before it, and now he's fine. Oh, everything's good. and then something changes. So yeah, when I always do this joke with my kids where I go, oh, like that. It's just like it's a thing, right? Everybody, it's a fun thing you do with But I love that.
Sigourney Weaver, of course, who I thought was really hot back then. I think she's still, so
yeah.
And so I think she was great in it. And in Home as well. Actually, I got this. I got sent this. I won it free. When people do these giveaways when you buy things. So and I don't collect these things, so I've got to find a way of getting rid of it. But this one's quite nice. It's
getting rid of it.
The alien. It's the guy. It's the robot guy. Yeah, who's
I actually really liked him.
Yeah,
he was
really good.
He was bad.
You've even got his head with all the milky stuff coming out of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That was so cool.
Oh. So there we go. That was my third choice. Alien.
Oh yeah, that's a great choice. Great.
I mean, the second one's good as well, but
yeah, and so my next choice is Jaws. You kind of mentioned it.
I did.
Actually, I rewatched it maybe a year ago, and I didn't realize even I remember it as a kid, but rewatching it, it's like, wow, there's so much more story than you remember in a way. And it's such a great film. It really is one that actually is kind of beyond horror movie because of the fact that it encouraged a whole generation of people to be aware, scared of going to the beach. I'm in Canada and I was scared to go to the beach because of, there could be a shark in the water or something like that,
The cast was so good as well. All of them were, Richard Dreyfuss. What's the guy, the big fisherman guy? He was brilliant.
I forgot his name. But yeah, he's famous too. Everybody that's in that movie, basically that was their career setting kind of movie. It was such a big movie. Was it Steven Spielberg, right?
Yeah.
That made it?
I mean, I didn't have it on my list because I don't really count it as a horror movie. It's,
well, it's got horror elements.
Yeah, I think it's valid. It's a valid argument to be a horror movie. I just sort of see it as an action sort of, and it's got had one of the biggest jumps. It's a bit like the Alien thing coming out.
Yeah, where the shark comes out of the water, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, good choice. Okay, what am I going to go with next? I'm going to go, and it's another classic, I'm afraid. I'm a child of my time. This is Rosemary's Baby. This is actually 1968. This is Roman Polanski directing. Mia Farrow in the lead role. Now this I was only 10 when this came out, so I obviously didn't see it when it came out, but I watched it I watched this a few times because it's just a fantastically made film. The actress that plays the old woman next door, or the old couple, the woman in the old couple, I think she is.
Yeah.
Ruth, what's she called? I have to write her name down. She got an Oscar. Oh, Ruth Gordon. She got an Oscar nomination.
Wow.
The whole thing is just so spooky, and you can see. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't eat the cake. I mean, it's just.
It's so messed up because you feel like, who do you trust?
Yeah.
And then in the end, you can't trust anyone.
Well, there was nobody she could trust. She'd had it, basically.
Yeah. But it felt like there was, at least maybe go to that person. Go to, you want to tell the actress to go to some person to protect you, but even your suggestion would have been wrong.
Yeah.
It's that's what kind of is interesting about it, because it's like, it actually, after watching it, you feel like, who can I trust? Are they really saying what they're, are they really with the intentions that they pretend to have? And it's pretty interesting. It's, I really like that movie. I actually read the original book of that movie, by Ira Levine or something like that.
Yes, I think it was. Yes,
yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah. The book only came out the year before, so the book was quite a big success, and they decided to do a movie of it the following year. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Really, really Rosemary's Baby, and it bears rewatching. 30 years later, it's still a great film.
Yeah, really great. I love that movie, but it didn't even make my top 20, sadly enough. But so yeah, the next one for me, and this is one that you didn't know, and I was kind of shocked that you didn't know this movie. It's called Dead of Night from 1945. And this is a movie that has so many things that now would be considered like tropes, like horror movie tropes. The situation is it's a group of people, they're sort of stuck together, and they're all telling stories. So they're all telling, it's like an anthology.
It's like one of these sort of
anthology
movies. Yeah.
Yep. So they're all telling stories, and they're all trying to up each other in terms of telling scary stories. So one of the scary stories that they tell is of the scene where this guy he has like one of those talking dummies.
Oh yeah, ventriloquists. Yeah,
ventriloquists, and he the ventriloquist is alive. And you could see that, right? And it's a really great story. All of the stories are just these kind of reminds me of the Twilight Zone kind of elements. They even have a funny story, but it's got a bit of a horror twist to it. It's quite well done, and it's it's very simple. It's just really good storytelling. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, actually.
I'll need to watch that. I may have seen it. It just hasn't hit just didn't.
Mm-hmm.
No, but I will.
Actually, strangely enough, that movie was in the top 50 horror movies of all time.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's a really great movie.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So the last one on my list for your channel, Alan, is, I'm afraid it's another absolute classic. It's Silence of the Lambs, from the novel by Thomas Harris. So I remember, this was, I'm quite an avid reader of thrillers and horror books back in the day. And my dad used to read sort of thriller books as well. So occasionally, if I read something that was, I enjoyed, I'd say to him, have you read this? And he'd sometimes say, and if he hadn't read it, I'd give it to him. And I remember reading Silence of the Lambs when it first came out, so nobody said anything to me about it. I didn't know anything about it, but I think I'd read a Thomas Harris novel before. So I read Silence of the Lambs, and I was like, wow, this is one of the best horror, detective type I was absolutely blown away. And I said to my dad, this is great, you need to read this, it's really good. And he said, okay, I'll read it. And he read it, and he went, oh, it was a bit too gory for me. Anyway, 2 or 3 years later, it became a smash hit film with
Jodie Foster,
Anthony Hopkins, just brilliant adaptation of the book. Almost followed the book brilliantly. Yeah, so I really enjoyed that.
So I didn't consider that a horror movie. I considered it a psychological thriller. So I kind of had it in a different list in my mind. But the funny thing is, when I heard the title, when the movie came out, I was like, Silence of the Lambs. Is it like some farming movie? Or I didn't know what it was going to be about. Like I kind of went into that movie very like clean slate, like had no blank slate, I should say. I just had no idea what it was going to be about, and I loved it. I thought it was a great movie. I came in with this really like total misconception of what it was going to be. But
there's no clue in the name, is there? The Silence.
Yeah.
I was
like, how does this fit in with Silence of the Lambs? And it was like, it was only through their. I like the fact that it is kind of an obscure reference.
Yeah, it's because Hannibal Lecter is trying to work out Clarice, isn't he? What is it that scares you, Clarice? And she's on the farm,
and she mentions the stories of the screaming of the lambs.
Once they'd killed all the lambs for slaughter, and it was the silence of the lambs which kept her awake at night. So
really, great story. I love that movie. Okay, so my last one is another one that you're not familiar with, but I had to have this on my list because it's a movie I've watched like 1 billion times. So like, I love this movie. It's a little hokey. It's a little silly. It's called Night of the Comet. Night of the Comet is what happens is there's a comet that goes across the sky.
Right.
Okay? So everybody wants to see this because it's like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Halley's Comet. That they always say the end of the world is going to happen when Halley's Comet comes.
Well, it comes every 75 years. So
75 years, yeah. And it's always like, oh, it's going to be the end of the world. It's like a comet that's going to end the world. Well, in Night of the Comet is that kind of situation where it actually brings the end of the world. So anyone that watches the comet actually dies. Okay? And all you find is their clothing left. Okay? And they turn to like this red dust. And anyone that was kind of like inside and was like protected slightly, they become zombies.
Right.
And anyone that was like perfectly isolated from it, they're fine. Okay. So the story is about those people and how they're now in this kind of semi-zombie world. And, it's a really great story. There's like so many.
Is this an old film or a new film or?
It's a 80s film, 80s. And there's even the typical scene where, I don't know why they always have this scene in like end of the world kind of movies, but there's always a scene where people have to go shopping. Like, oh, the shopping mall, it's empty. Like, let's go shopping. So there's a let's go shopping scene in it. It's a very good movie. It's probably a lot of people would be like, why is this on your list? But it is I loved it. It's just personally, I think it's a great movie. So yeah, Night of the Comet. Great movie.
I'll have a check on that one.
Yeah. So okay, so those were our first 5 on our list. What is going to be the other 5? We've got to go over to Mark's channel to check those out. And I left some really big movies that some that you might not have heard of, and some that are just like awesome movies. So go over and check those out on Mark's channel by clicking the link somewhere there. Okay. Thanks again, Mark.
Thank you. I enjoyed that.